Okay, so we're going to be in your workbooks on page 129, and it says 6.3 linear functions at the top. So let's look at activity 1. It says plot the points from the table in a coordinate plane. So if I plot these, my ordered pairs, I have x and then y. So I'm going to go over 0 and up 150. So that's going to be right there. Over 2 up 125. Over 4 up 100. Over 6 up 75. And over 8 up 50. So there's my points, and I will connect my line there. And then it says write a linear equation for the function. So if you keep in mind our slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, we know that b is where it crosses the y-axis. That's your y-intercept. So if I look here, it crosses my y-axis up at 150. So where the b is, I'm going to put a 150. Kind of do this backwards. Got my x there. Your slope, remember, we get from rise over run. So if I pick 2 points, let's say I pick this point and this point. And remember, you could pick any 2 points you wanted. If I start here, that's at 125. I would need to go down. So I would actually need to rise a negative 25. And then I'm going to run 1, 2. So my slope is actually negative 25 over 2. So that's going to go in front of the x. And then we have the y equals way out here in front. So there is your linear equation for this graph. We graphed it. We figured out where it crossed the y-axis. And then we used rise over run to determine the slope, and then just plugged them into y equals mx plus b. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for b. So I'm going to plot 4, 15. So over 4 up 15 would be right here. Over 6, this would be 6 right here, up 20. And you've really got to pay close attention to what your axes go by, especially when you go to find your slope. Over 8 up 25, over 10 up 30, over 12 up 35. Okay, so here is my graph right here. And now we need to write the equation for it. So keep in mind y equals mx plus b. Okay, so this time let's do the slope first. Let's say we do this point and this point. Well, technically this one was up at 15. Keep that in mind. So I would actually need to rise 5, and I'm going up, so that's going to be positive. And I'm going to run, I'm actually going from 4 to 6. So you're going to run 2. So your slope is 5 halves. And we have our x here. Plus, and then your y-intercept, where does it cross the y-axis? Well, just with these points, that didn't show it to me, but if I continued my line on down, I noticed that it crosses the y-intercept right here. And if I just follow the pattern, that's going to cross at 5. So we have plus 5. And there's your equation. Okay, on C and D, we jump down here. Same thing, I'm going to plot these points. So we have negative 4, 4, negative 2, 6, 0, 8, 2, 10, and 4, 12. There's my line. Okay, to find my slope, we do rise over run. So if I start, let's say we start right here in the middle. I'm going to rise, and notice that I would actually be rising 2. And I'm going to run 2. So your slope would be 2 over 2, which is just 1. So 1x, and technically you don't even need that 1 there, plus, and then where does it cross the y-axis? Sorry about that. Well, it crosses right here, and I kind of covered up the number, but that's 8 right there. So it crosses at 8. There you go. Okay, part D. Start graphing these. -4, 1, -2, 0, 0, -1, 2, -2, 4, -3. There's my line, kind of. Okay, and then we plug our numbers into y equals mx plus b. So let's say we start right here and go here. Well, everything goes by ones on this graph, so that's nice. So when I rise, I'm actually going down 1, so that's -1. And then I go to the right 2. So my slope is -1 over 2, -1/2, x. And then it crosses the y-axis right here at -1. So whenever you put that into your equation, make sure you put -1. Or if you put plus and -1, that would be fine also. And there's your equation. Okay, jumping over to the next page, activity 2. They're going to give us a table, and we are going to figure out what the function is. What is the equation going on? So basically, we are looking for a pattern going on. How do you get from x to y? So let's look at A. X is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Y is 2 pi, 4 pi, 6 pi, 8 pi, 10 pi. So I want to ask myself, how do I get from 1 to 2 pi? How do I get from 2 to 4 pi? Well, I notice the pattern with the numbers, you're multiplying by 2 every time. But then they've thrown a pi in there. So whenever we go to write the function, it's going to be y equals 2, because we multiplied by 2, but we also multiplied by pi. So 2 times pi times whatever your x value was gives you the y row. Now, they want us to graph this. So if I come down a little bit, okay, they don't have any numbers on your graph, but we'll start with 0 here. Okay, and I'm going to skip every other line, just go by ones here. And then up the side, that's going to be 2 pi, and again, I'm going to skip every other line. 4 pi, 6 pi, 8 pi, and 10 pi. And what I'm going to do is just simply plot these points on my graph. So over 1 up to 2 pi, over 2 up to 4 pi, 3 6 pi, 4 8 pi, 5 10 pi. So here is your line. Okay, and then up in the problem, if I scroll back up a little bit, it's asked, what do the variables x and y represent? Okay, well, in this specific equation, we've got a circle here. The x is the radius. That you should have been able to pick out from the picture. Remember, your radius is the distance from the center out to the edge. And then in this case, y is going to be the circumference. And that's the distance around the circle. Okay? If we jump over and look at B, what's the pattern going on? How do you get from x to y? How do you get from 1 to 10, 2 to 12, 3 to 14? I notice it's not just straight multiplication. So I will say it's going to be a combination of multiplying by something and then adding something. So it just so happens that our equation is y equals 2x plus 8. You multiply this by 2 and then add 8. multiply by 2, and then add 8. So we're going to graph this. Oops. I need to put my numbers on here first. Okay, so I am going to kind of do the same thing I did over on the last one and go every other one. But over going up, I'm going to go by 4s because the numbers are a little bit bigger. Okay, and then I just plot the points. So 1, 10 would be about right there. 2, 12. 3, 14. 4, 16. 5, 18. And if I were to continue this line, I would also have a point at 0, 8. Okay. Now they ask us, what do the x and y represent? Well, x, it shows in the picture right here. That's going to be the width of the rectangle. And then y is going to represent the perimeter distance around that rectangle. Okay, now C and D, I'm not going to worry about graphing these, but I do want to practice on writing the rule for them. How do you get from X to Y? So let's look at C. How do you get from 1 to 5, 2 to 6, 3 to 7? Well, I notice that this is you add 4, add 4, add 4. So it looks like our pattern is you just add 4. So to get y, we would take x plus 4. And that would be our function or our equation. And we could graph that very easily. Let's look at D. How do you get from 1 to 28, 2 to 40, 3 to 52, and so on? Well, as I do this, one thing I want you to remember whenever we write our equations, remember your slope is the number in front of the x. And one way to find that is your change in y's over change in x's. So let's say I pick these 2 points right here. If I subtract my y's, 40 minus 28, and subtract my x's, 2 minus 1, 40 minus 28 is 12. 2 minus 1 is 1. So your slope would be 12. So I know that part of my equation is 12x, but 1 times 12 is not 28. So I know there's going to have to be something added on to that. So I just need to figure this out. 1 times 12 would get me to 12. How many would I have left over to get to 28? And that would be 16. So that's another way you could figure out your pattern or your equation if you can't just figure it out in your head. Is figure out what the slope is with those numbers, and then if you need anything else added on, you can go from there. So you may want to make a note of this equation. It's been a little while since we talked about it, but that will come in very handy. Now, down on number 3. How can you use a function to describe a linear pattern? Okay, well, what that does is it helps you see the relationship between x and y, and that's my abbreviation for between. Okay, you're looking for the pattern, you're looking for what they have in common, the relationship between the two of them. Now, your assignment to go with this is going to be over on the next page, page 132. To complete that, you're just writing the function or the equation that goes with it, and then down on 5, you'll actually need to graph that.